Hello and welcome to today's Killer Content Showcase Series session. I'm Brian Anderson, news editor at Demand Gen Report, and I'm happy to have Alex Schutte, Principal Digital Marketing Strategist at Paycor, joining me today. He's going to talk about the company's award-winning interactive content and campaigns that they've run. Great to have you here, Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Excited to be here and happy to represent Paycor.
Great. Just to start off the conversation, can you share a little bit more about your target buyer and what you've gleaned about their content consumption habits and preferences over time?
Yeah, great question, Brian. So Paycor, we're in the HCM markets. What that means is we sell HR and payroll software. So we primarily sell to 1 to 1,000 employees, companies within those size ranges. And in terms of our key personas, we're targeting HR leaders as well as CFOs, finance people, and as well as small business owners. So in terms of what we've done to really research our core buyers, we definitely have done a lot of survey research. So we've actually surveyed our current clients as well as prospects to find out what types of content they like to consume. Some of the key things that we learned was they want to know about HR best practices. They're also concerned with compliance, things that affect their job that may be outside of their control directly, but really have an impact on their employees. And then in terms of the types of content that they were consuming, we've always done a great job with our webinar programs. We crank out probably 100 plus webinars per year, all about HR best practices, things that you can do to become better at your job, and really not product focused, but more educational. So we had this data going in, and we found that our clients and prospects also like to respond to surveys. So they actually will take the time to fill out a survey when it's positioned in a way that it's gleaning trends and benchmarking and to see how you stack up. So a lot of that research really helps fuel our content strategies for interactive.
Yeah, that's great. And when it comes to their willingness to engage with your brand and engaging with the surveys, it makes sense to go into an interactive sort of mentality. But it's interesting how you folks decided to go full funnel with this interactive initiative. Any reasons why you decided to go full funnel with your interactive initiatives, and what were you hoping to accomplish embracing interactive after learning all this from your buyers?
Sure. Yeah. So it really started with, crawling before we could walk and walking before we could run. So, Brian, we did have a couple of interactive resources already on our website. So we had a time savings calculator that was built by one of the developer agencies we work with. And then we also just had a simple free calculator that allowed an HR person to figure out how certain overtime regulations would affect their employees. We saw that there was a lot of interaction with these tools. So we could see in Google Analytics people were completing them. But there were a few key problems that we had with these. One, they were pretty expensive just for the developer to create these and have them sit there. Two, we weren't pushing any data back into the hands of our sales reps or into Salesforce or Marketo, which we use for marketing automation. So we were seeing that these were getting use, but we weren't able to capture lead information, and we weren't able to really bring through all that valuable data for the questions and answers that they were actually giving us, and able to pass that through into Marketo and into Salesforce to really personalize that follow-up on the sales side. So from there, what we said was, okay, well, let's try to bring in a more advanced solution that can actually do those things so that we can capture leads with it and we can push data back to make our sales process more personalized. So let's start with those first two assets. We did that. We leveraged a solution called SnapApp. There's others out there, but we use SnapApp to really create those first few interactive content pieces. So we created 3 out the gate, and we were able to get that valuable lead information captured, and then we were able to educate our SDR team to really customize their follow-up based on what we were seeing in those interactive pieces. So once we had that early success with the first 3, we said, well, it doesn't make sense for us to only have these 3 assets in here. What can we do to really integrate interactive into our full content strategies? So we look at interactive not as, hey, what can we create an interactive piece of? We really start with the buyer need. And then we decide, does it make sense for interactive to play a role in this? So when we have key marketing strategies that we're trying to push out and reach our target audience, we do think about who is the persona. So is this an HR person, a finance person? 2, where are they at in the funnel? Is this top of funnel, mid funnel, or bottom funnel? And then from there, we decide, okay, for top of funnel, let's say the topic is on recruiting. Well, let's have a guide for 7 tips for creating the ideal candidate experience that you can download. But hey, we also position a cost of a bad hire calculator where there's actually an ROI interactive component for, hey, if you hire someone that's poor for the job, what's that impact on your business? So then we can actually have 2 different content pieces that are related in that same theme, but giving multiple ways for you to actually go about that journey. And then as we started to build out our interactive content, we really looked at the holes within our funnel strategy. So within HR, how many content assets do we have at the top, middle, and bottom? And at the end of, over the last year and a half, we've really built nearly 30 interactive content pieces that really address all the various stages of the funnel. So we'll have some calculators at the very top. We may have ROI calculators in the middle. And then bottom funnel, we have really, think of it as solution finders, product pickers, et cetera. So nearly a quarter of our digital marketing revenue is now brought in from these interactive content pieces because we have integrated them throughout our marketing strategies across the funnel.
Yeah, and it's really neat how you folks integrated that interactivity throughout the funnel. Thanks for sharing that. And of course, when it comes to interactive content, the idea is to increase engagement with that content in particular. But it's still important to also make sure that the content is relevant to your buyer. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about how you folks perfected that balance of creating engaging, memorable content, but also relevant content that brought some value to your target audience and also accelerated them through the funnel.
Yeah, I think my biggest suggestion on interactive content is think of it as show, not tell. So traditionally, marketers will tell your audience of, hey, this is why this new innovative thing is important. This is why you should buy our software, our services. But really showing them can be that much more impactful when they can actually input their own information. So with the calculator, they can input their own data and truly see how this trend, this initiative, or in our case, a regulation may impact them with their own data. So it just makes it much more granular to them. For me, the success with interactive, yes, it can be a pretty engaging piece of content, but if at the end of the day that value isn't there for your consumer, they're not going to go through those 10 questions, even if it's the prettiest looking page or the most creative use of icons. If that carrot at the end of the stick isn't juicy enough for them, they won't care and they won't go through your interactive experience. So really keeping in mind, okay, what's the need for this buyer? What are they hoping to achieve from this? What's the question we're trying to answer for them? Is it a benchmark assessment? So maybe, say, if you're a marketer, ABM is all the craze right now, and you want to know, okay, how does your ABM initiative stack up? Well, someone may want to say, hey, am I behind the curve or am I ahead of the curve? I've heard of this thing called ABM. How do I really assess myself? Because everyone wants to know how they're doing versus their peers. So really it comes down to what's in it for that buyer.
Really great, really great. And when it comes to promotion and amplifying that content across all your channels, how did you folks approach that? Which tactics did you find the most effective and maximized the overall value of the interactive content that you were creating?
Yeah, I'd say by far the biggest thing is integrating it in all of your campaigns. And what I mean by that is don't think of it as a one-time email send. Yes, email worked great. So when we did have it in our ad hoc email campaigns, interactive pieces of content did perform well, but also think of them as more evergreen pieces of content. So that solution finder that I mentioned earlier in our talk is actually one of the secondary calls to actions directly on our homepage. So that's always on our website. It's typically the top 3 CTAs that someone's coming in as. So that's an always on, always breathing piece of content that we have living on our site. So think of ways that you can integrate these interactive pieces of content into evergreen content assets, such as your web pages, your product pages. But then also, how can you integrate these content items into your other programs? So we have a PPC landing page that has an interactive component embedded within that gets ongoing inbound traffic from it. within our nurture email campaigns. Once you get through the introduction education pieces, we have some more mid-funnel, bottom-funnel nurtures that have more of an ROI calculator, time savings calculator. So really integrating them throughout is definitely the key to a successful interactive content strategy.
Great. So when it comes to your Finney Award from the Killer Content Awards, it's been a while since you folks received it. I believe it was back in February. It'd be great to get an update on where your current interactive initiatives are, how that has grown, and what kind of key lessons learned among you and your team over the past couple of months since you've won the award.
Yeah, so we've probably had maybe 10 to 12 additional interactive pieces of content post that award. So we've had some big wins, and then also some that didn't quite go as well received as we would have hoped. So some of the key wins happened when we were able to tie in an interactive piece of content with a broader theme or trend, or even something outside of your industry. So we did one around the Olympics that had great success. So we did the HR Olympics. That was an interactive piece of content that had a lot of engagement rate, and we were able to tie it into something external outside of our business, but still tied it into product, and we were able to customize our follow-up based on some of the questions they answered there. We also had some more that were misses. So I'd say
Uh-oh, it seems like your audio and video are cutting out. Can you hear me, Alex?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it looks like there was a hiccup in the internet. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay.
All right.
It just started to cut out when you started getting into the misses. If you would want to, start from there.
Sure. So on the misses, so really with those, the biggest thing is don't force interactive content. So I'd say one example that we had where we tried to force it more was we created 3 or 4 videos that were maybe 3 minutes in length that focused on some different personas, but we made the prospect go through probably 10 different questions before they could even see the video. So people just weren't completing it. That carrot wasn't great enough for them to go through the process. So it would have been better if we just embedded the videos directly on a landing page, sent them straight to it. But we've seen a lot of success in our efforts. I think at the time of our Finney Awards, we had maybe a 25x return. It's now up to over 40x return on our interactive content. So being able to scale our interactivity, seeing what's working and what's not, replicating the things that are working, and ensuring that we have evergreen interactive pieces of content has been key to our success.
Great, and it's always good to hear like how you're able to fail fast and learn from your experiences. It's always a learning game when it comes to the B2B marketplace and understanding your target audience. So it's great to hear that it's similar over at Paycor. Based on the results of these assets and this interactive content that you folks created, are you excited to experiment with new interactive formats out there, or new interactive approaches? Is there anything new that you guys are testing out?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the things that we're trying to do to even scale our interactive piece of content even further is thinking of integrating interactivity into other content formats. What I mean by that is you don't have to have this huge designed standalone interactive piece of content. How can you integrate interactivity into other content formats? By that I mean, okay, a blog post. How can you integrate a quick survey, a quiz, a mini assessment directly within a blog post? So some people consume content in different ways. So if you can have a very scannable, nice blog post with some key information, but then also ask a related survey directly within that blog post, and you don't need to ask for 7 fields for it. Maybe just get an email on there, have them subscribe to the blog. Those are some ways to get interactivity just deeper in the hands of your consumers. Some things that are a little bit more innovative that I'm excited about, we do use another tool called Uberflip for our resource center. So they have their gated PDFs are basically HTML5 web pages. So if you go to download a piece of content from our website, you'll actually be able to view it directly within your browser, but instead of a PDF, Adobe PDF format, it's actually an HTML page. So you can directly embed interactivity within our white papers. So now that we have, say we have a new benchmarking report coming out. So if we have 2,000 responses we've had on this survey, we're putting together the 2018 HR trends you need to know. We can actually integrate an assessment directly within that trend report. So as you're reading it, these various questions, you can then assess your own organization's ability to do each of these key things. So if we have a section on employee engagement, there may be 5 questions about this organization, about your own employee engagement best practices and how you stack up against our survey data. So how can you integrate interactivity into more traditional kind of offline formats, but give it that interactive push? And then the last piece is, I'd say video is another great area for interactivity. So there's ways that you can have a video that's embedded on your site, but you can actually have calculators or quizzes directly within that video. So you can have the video pause, and you can actually, within your video script, say, hey, now, Brian, what do you think about that? And then actually have that user force them to ask or answer a few questions directly within that video. So not only can you push back the fact that they watched the video, but now you can also push back data, if they're cookied, on specifically those questions that they answered within the video. So it's another way to increase your video engagement, but then also to extend your interactive content in those other formats.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear the whole idea of like spicing up static content formats, because when you think interactive content and creating interactive content, you feel like the whole entire thing needs to be out of this world, everything's interactive, that sort of thing. But honestly, all you really have to do is just understand when's the right time for it, incorporate it into content formats that you're familiar with, and just give your audience new ways to engage. That's really cool. So when it comes to any tips or insight you would share with colleagues that are trying to get into interactivity and incorporate interactivity into their content efforts, but might be a little hesitant to do so. There's always risk aversion out there. So what kind of tips would you share with someone that's new to this process or looking to dabble in it?
Yeah, I think it starts with research. So you have to know your audience. So interactivity, I think, can work for many different types of audience, but you really need to start with that research. So one, just doing easy things. So surveys. Does your audience even respond to surveys? So when it comes to industry trends, things with how they're doing as far as best practices, are they willing to take the time to go through those things, and are they hungry for that knowledge? So our buyers tend to be bogged down in their day-to-day. They'd like to be more strategic, but often they're stuck in execution mode. So they are eating up our content that is more educational, that tells them better ways to do their job, helps them be more strategic, and we can really tie those interactive pieces of content to help solve those challenges for them. So starting with the research, find out if your buyers even care to respond to those types of content assets, but then find out, once you're doing the surveys, what are those key topics that they just don't know, or how do they want to assess themselves or benchmark themselves against others? But really that research piece is key. And then from there, starting small. So you don't need to immediately go out and buy a big solution to do this. See what you can do just to get some test information. As I mentioned at the top of this call here, when I first started, we had just a free, easy little calculator that we built. Unfortunately, like I said, it couldn't quite capture all that rich information I was looking for, but it showed me that people respond to this. They actually are interacting with it, they're engaging with it. And from there, I said, okay, yes, this is worth the organization's time, and this is why we need to invest in this to further increase our digital performance online.
Great. Great. Alex, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you to everyone out there watching. If you have killer content like Paycor, if you feel as though your content is award-winning, you're in luck, because our nominations are now open for the 2018 Killer Content Awards. If you want to learn more about these awards and to see whether or not you can win an award in this upcoming February at the B2B Marketing Exchange, feel free to check out the URL, which you can find in the description below. But with that, Alex, thanks again. It's always great chatting with you.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.